You know, I still flash back to the day we moved in. Every time I pull my truck into the driveway, I can see the sheer exhausted relief on my face. The kind you only get after 15 years on the force, grinding out every double shift, every graveyard detail, just to save up enough for a genuine piece of the American dream. Not a condo, not a rental, and for God's sake, not a shack under some tyrant's thumb. A standalone, modest house with a real yard, a 2-car garage that didn't flood when it rained, and the one non-negotiable rule: no HOA. I swore I'd never trade in my police badge for a clipboard of neighborhood rules. No way, no how. My wife Sarah, she was practically floating, unpacking boxes she'd kept sealed since before our boy. Leo was born. He was 5 then, and the backyard, with that rickety old swing set the previous owners left behind, was his entire universe. Pure magic. Our street, Magnolia Bend, sat on the quiet western curve, a few feet outside the gate of the immaculate, hyper-controlled community called Oak Haven Estates. The kind of place where the grass was genetically modified and every shrub looked like it was plotting a coup. I checked the property lines 3 times before closing, just to be sure. We were clean, legally autonomous, safe. For the first few months it was paradise. I'd park my old sedan, the cruiser stayed at the precinct most nights, change into sweats and just be a dad and a husband. The only sounds were crickets and the occasional ice cream truck, and it was perfect. That bubble burst on a Tuesday afternoon. I was on my way home to grab a file I'd forgotten, still wearing my uniform jacket. Rookie mistake, I guess, when I saw her approaching. Brenda Sinclair. You could tell from 40 feet away she thought she owned the asphalt. Mid-50s, sharp blonde bob, designer athleisure zipped right up to her chin, and a posture so rigid she looked like she'd swallow a pencil if you startled her. She smiled a bright, predatory smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Officer," she chirped, or should I say neighbor, "I'm Brenda Sinclair, president of the Oak Haven Estates Council." She introduced herself like she was reading a presidential proclamation. I kept it brief. "John, just grabbing something." "Nice to meet you." She barely acknowledged my name, her eyes already scanning my property line, and then she hit the hook. "We were just wondering, John, have you considered joining our community? Your home is technically just outside our bounds, but we do offer an associate membership, access to our events, our landscaping consultation, a little sense of order, you know?" I cut her off gently, my hand raised like I was halting traffic. "Appreciate it, Brenda, but no thank you. We're happy with our current arrangement." Her smile didn't drop, but it tightened, like a knot pulled too fast. "Of course. But if you ever change your mind, John, I'm right across the bend. Unit 14. She walked away, but I could feel her eyes drilling into the back of my head as I opened my door. Weird neighbor, I thought. Just a bored woman trying to flex a little micro-power. I've dealt with far worse personalities running drug rings, but I didn't forget her. The little visit started soon after, always under the guise of neighborly concern. Once it was a flyer for a non-mandatory community mixer that she made sure to mention was members only, with a patronizing chuckle. Then it was a complaint about my recycle bins being out 15 minutes too early, delivered with a syrupy sweet tone. I just smiled, nodded, and put the bins back. I wasn't going to engage in her little game. I was a cop. I knew how to ignore noise. But she was persistent. I remember one evening I was out there, trying to fix a sprinkler head that Leo had run over, and she just materialized at the edge of my lawn, holding a pristine pamphlet. "John," she sighed dramatically, "we have an issue in the neighborhood. A really dreadful one." That's when she told me about the couple, Alex and Chloe. They'd bought a property right on the edge of the Oak Haven boundary, a modest little starter home. They were young, early 20s, just starting out. Alex was a coder. Chloe was finishing up her pre-med degree. Brenda explained, her voice going thin, that they were refusing to cooperate, ignoring their quarterly dues, and letting their grass get, gasp, 3 inches high. They were misled by their discount realty agency, she sniffed, and now they think they're above the council's jurisdiction. It's an insult to our property values. I leaned on my shovel, trying to keep the amusement off my face. "Sounds like a civil matter, Brenda. Maybe a lawyer." She rolled her eyes like I'd suggested she fly to the moon. "The courts are slow, John, and expensive. But you—" Her eyes lit up with a truly appalling idea. "You're an officer." "A presence. You could just swing by, wear the uniform, flash the badge. Just a friendly, authoritative nudge. Tell them the title is under review until they comply. And then she reached into her immaculate white tote bag and pulled out the envelope. Thick, white, poorly sealed, because the stack of hundreds inside was pushing the flap open. I just stared at it. "What is that, Brenda?" I asked, my voice low. Thank you," she purred, sliding it an inch closer. $5,000. A token of appreciation for keeping the Oakhaven integrity intact. My humor evaporated. I felt a cold burn in my gut, the kind of professional disgust that cuts through a joke. "Brenda," I said, stepping back, "are you seriously asking me to impersonate legal enforcement, threaten a young couple, and commit real estate fraud? For $5,000, she blinked, genuinely confused by my moral objection. "It's not fraud, dear. It's clarity. They don't belong here. They're so placeholders, and if you think 5,000 isn't enough," and she didn't even hesitate, "let's make it 10. 10,000 cash, John. Think about what that would do for Leo's college fund." That's when the first emotional punch landed. She had brought my family into her dirty little deal. I took a deliberate step toward her, my shadow falling over her pristine outfit. "Get off my property, Brenda," I said, my voice flat, empty of courtesy. "Unless you want me to call the real authorities, and trust me, the badge I wear covers a lot more than HOA bylaws. You walk away now." The smile, finally, truly vanished. Her face twisted into something raw and ugly, a pure expression of thwarted entitlement. She didn't argue. She just gave me a single poisonous. I couldn't let it go. Not the 10,000, but the sheer predatory arrogance of it. The next morning, I swung by Alex and Chloe's place. I left the uniform in the car and approached as John, the concerned neighbor. Alex, a skinny kid with intense programmer eyes, answered the door. He was pale. "We've been getting visits," he admitted right away, exhaustion in his voice. "She, Brenda, left some kind of demand letter, even superglued a violation notice to our mailbox. Chloe is freaking out." I spent the next hour helping them draft a formal report, walking them through the steps to get an official restraining order against the entire Oakhaven Estates Council. They deserved to be here, and Brenda's little power trip wasn't going to take their house. The court issued the injunction a week later, legally shutting Brenda down. For a brief, blissful period, things were quiet. Too quiet. That suffocating silence before a storm. Then the low-level harassment began. A flattened tire that looked too deliberately cut to be random. A bag of dog excrement left right on my welcome mat. And then the new neighbor, Garth. He showed up a few days later, renting the vacant house 2 doors down. Clean-cut, mid-30s, an unnervingly straight posture, ex-military. I instantly tagged him. He was too friendly, too interested in my job, always slipping in questions like, "Do you think housing laws are too weak on undesirables?" When he finally mentioned Alex and Chloe, calling them squatters, I knew for sure. I ran his prints through a backdoor channel. Ghost, no lease, no utilities, no public record. He was a hired hand, a proxy. I found the GPS tracker taped inside my rear wheel well that evening. I didn't disable it. I just put on gloves, slipped it into an empty coffee can and dropped it into my recycling bin. A gift for whoever was watching the signal. But I needed a better trap. I called an old buddy in the district attorney's office, Max, and told him the whole absurd saga. Max loved it. "Give her a rope, John," he said. "She'll hang herself." The next day I invited Garth over for a beer. Sarah and Leo were conveniently visiting her sister. I had a 6-pack chilling, burgers on the grill, and a high-quality audio recorder tucked deep inside the patio furniture. Garth, thinking he had a crooked cop on the hook, loosened up fast. After his second beer, the mask slipped. "Brenda says you just need a nudge," he slurred. "She's willing to double the retainer if you can just accelerate the compliance for those 2 kids." I leaned back, my voice neutral. "Accelerate how, Garth?" He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Make their lives hell. Loud music, fake fines, anonymous threats. Drive 'em out. People like that." He gestured vaguely toward Alex and Chloe's direction. "They crack easy. They're just placeholders. Placeholder. Brenda's favorite word." I smiled, shook his hand, and walked him out. Garth's audio file went straight to Max and a federal investigator he'd looped in. 2 days later, Garth's rental house was empty, locked tight. But Brenda wasn't done. The real escalation came when I found a printed photograph of my family, Sarah, Leo, and me, tucked into an envelope on my kitchen counter. It had been taken from across the street a few days earlier. That was the final unforgivable trespass. She had moved past property lines and petty fraud. She was targeting my family's safety. I called Max, no more soft moves. We set up the final sting, a meeting at a public coffee shop, neutral territory. I left a vague handwritten note on her door, ready to talk, might be willing to help. She called predictably within the hour. I wore a tiny covert recorder. Max had 2 FBI agents pretending to be overworked grad students nearby. Brenda walked in looking like a fashion magazine cover, her eyes sharp with victory. She slid a new envelope across the table, thicker, tighter. 15,000, she whispered, not even bothering with a friendly greeting. No more games, John. You go to their house, tell them the mortgage company flagged the title for review, and they have 48 hours to vacate for an inspection. Use your authority. You get the cash and you get your peace. I looked at the envelope, then straight into her cold, calculating eyes. I let the silence hang there, heavy and accusatory. Then I spoke the line I'd rehearsed. Funny, Brenda, because this sounds a lot like you're offering a federal officer a bribe to participate in a criminal conspiracy to seize private property. Her composure shattered. Her perfect composure, her pristine facade, it just cracked. They don't belong here, she hissed, the true venom finally spilling out. They lower the tone. They park their rusty Ford right on the curb. They are invaders, John. They threaten our entire community structure. That was it. That was the confession. I stood up slowly. You're done, Brenda. The 2 agents moved in instantly. One